thank you, Katot sir, for that enlightening words. I think many of the delegates have got an idea regarding the validation, documentation procedures, or like the insurance things. Many of the research or the practitioners think that only means the Western medicine gets the insurance and not Ayurveda. Even as a hospital, as we have also faced a little bit problems, like many patients come and ask that whether you get insurance for Ayurveda, and I specify that only very few insurance companies like Star Insurance, they receive the complete coverage of Ayurveda. So thank you, sir, for enlightening us. Now I welcome Dr. Varghese Thomas for the session and to give a brief idea regarding your PhD studies and so on. So I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, Amrita. Shall I share my screen now?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Is it visible?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Hi, Katot sir. Namaskaram. Respected Madan sir. I'm Dr. Varghese. I'm basically an Ayurvedic doctor. Did my my MD in the subject of Dravya Guna. Currently pursuing PhD in Transdisciplinary University, Bangalore. I'm here to speak about validation and documentation in Ayurveda from a perspective of the efforts that we put into as an institute and as a group where we try to bring out different concepts in Ayurveda and try to learn, try to study them from different angles based on science, and ultimately come up with some sort of a validation and documentation in the field. So I would just like to give a brief about our university. We are based in Bangalore. Our university name is Transdisciplinary University. We concentrate majorly on traditional knowledge, including Ayurveda. We also have a research hospital, IAIM, Institute of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine, near to our campus. It's a 100-bedded NABH accredited hospital where we have integrated facilities where we use different streams of medicine, like we use Ayurveda along with allopathy, along with yoga and other supporting systems to address healthcare issues. So the way that we look at research in our institute would be to bring different disciplines together to address one question in Ayurveda. The concepts would be, inspired from Ayurveda, and we try to look at different angles of that question using different methods. So the three pillars of our institute, which try to bring out answers for such questions, three major pillars are one is the Center of Life Sciences, where we have a lab, established lab, where we look at model organisms and biological studies related to model organisms. Second is the Center of Health Sciences, or the Institute of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine, the hospital, where we treat patients. Also, we document case studies. We also try to bring out documentations and evidences based on clinical research. And the third major pillar is a Center for Conservation of Natural Resources, which is focused mainly on conservation of medicinal plants. So conservation is one area which the institute has been doing since a long time, or almost more than 25 years, where we try to find out the medicinal plants which have to be conserved, and we try to bring up databases, and we try to put out the necessity for conserving the medicinal plants, the list of medicinal plants that has to be conserved, and so on and so forth. And these three centers work together And the basic motto of working in the field is to bring out or refine clinical protocols which are told in Ayurveda, and products and medicines which are clinically tested, and also other other areas like conservation strategies, where we have to bring out policy changes. We have to empower community based conservation activities based on Ayurvedic medicinal plants and other plants used in traditional medicine. Also, scientifically validate drug substitutions. There is huge problem of unavailability of medicinal plants when it comes to production, when it comes to industry based Ayurvedic production of medicines. So we also try to learn or study what can be substituted for those medicinal plants that which have already entered the list of endangership. So the first the Center for Ayurveda Biology and Holistic Nutrition, it's a lab facility where we try to merge Shastra with science. We try to study concepts of Shastra, basically Ayurvedic Shastra, and we try to study it based on science. And few model organisms that we use to do this are cell lines, yeast, C. elegans, Caenorhabditis elegans, Drosophila melanogaster, etc. We also have am I audible? Amrita, is there any problem?
No. It's everything is fine.
Yeah. So these are the 3-4 model systems that we use in our institute. We also use albino rats, we're combining with other institutes. I personally work with the model organism C. elegans, Caenorhabditis elegans, which I can tell you about in a later point of time. So what actually we do with all these model organisms. So I would like to show you few publications that we have come up with and the concepts behind those publications. Few of them are based on the concept of Rasayana, which is a major concept, very important concept in Ayurveda, where Ayurveda says there are a list of medicinal plants, there are a list of food, which is told to be Rasayana in property. So we don't understand Rasayana when we look at Rasayana in a biological sense. We don't understand Rasayana fully, or we have just started to understand Rasayana. What is Rasayana is a big question. So what we have tried doing here is to understand Rasayana, break Rasayana concept into different areas and try understand Rasayana based on simple organism-based studies. So one study that we had done is based on Amla, Indian gooseberry. We tried to understand the iron dialysability of gooseberry using that was using cell lines. So what actually we did was Amlaki is one major plant. It's told to be Rasayana in Ayurveda, and Ayurveda uses Amlaki or gooseberry extensively. So what we did, and it is also used in the management of iron deficiency anemia. And after all these years of interventions from government and from different research outputs, we still globally we have not still come out of iron deficiency anemia as a country or as a population, as we haven't come out of it fully. So we were thinking how Ayurveda can be used here. So what we did was, the study was basically to understand Amalaki and how Amalaki improves bioavailability. So in this study, we used the study was headed by Dr. Padma Venkat, the then head of the institute lab. So what we did was, in the study, standard cell-free and cell-based models were used that are used in modern biomedical sciences to study digestion and bioavailability, which were used to examine the effect of amla fruit juice. So the drug which was used was amla fruit juice, and we tried to understand. We compared it with uh, three or four. There were four groups where we fed. We used this amla alone, and we used ascorbic acid, which is the main content of amla, the ascorbic acid, and amla alone, and ferric sulfate, and the iron along with ascorbic acid, and iron along with amla. These were the four groups. So the study proved that amla juice increased the digestible iron three times more than the iron, three times more than the iron alone in the cell-free digestion model. And also iron uptake in CACO2 cell lines increased to about 18 times more than the control in the presence of amla juice. So it was, the concept was clear. It was not just ascorbic acid which improves the absorption of, if it was just ascorbic acid, it would have shown the results with just ascorbic acid, but it was not true. It was the whole fruit juice which had much more effect than ascorbic acid mixed with iron. Another study was based on the fruit fly, Drosophila, where this was a different angle of Rasayana, which we tried to understand Rasayana as something which would increase your lifespan or health span and health span. So the first study was based on digestion and bioavailability, where Rasayana was looked at an angle from its bioavailability perspective. The second was based on health span or lifespan increase, the property of a drug to improve health span or lifespan. The drug used, the test drug was pomegranate, the common anar, the pomegranate, where we use the model organism used was the fruit fly. What we did was supplementation. We did supplementation of standard corn meal, which is the standard meal that we use in labs to feed fruit flies, with 10% of pomegranate juice. And we saw that this extended the lifespan of the flies by around 18%. So this was a huge increase. And the control which we used was resveratrol, which is a standard drug which is used to study as a control to increase lifespan. So further, we also found that the pomegranate juice fed flies were also physically very active. It was physically very active, and the physical activity it improved and extended for a longer period of time when the flies were fed with pomegranate juice. So this the slide, the paper which you see down is the publication based on that study. Pomegranate juice enhances healthy lifespan in Drosophila, an exploratory study. This was also headed by Dr. Padma Venkat. Another angle, this is a third angle, a third organism or a model system that we use to learn concepts of Ayurveda, and we try to bridge Shastra with science. Here we use Caenorhabditis elegans. This study has been done from my own group. The study was done based on a plant called as Brahmi. Brahmi is a plant which is told in Ayurveda, which Ayurveda says, Ayurveda claims it has great Medhya property. Medhya is something which improves your memory, intellect. So Brahmi is also widely used. Brahmi Ghritam is one of the major formulation which is sold out in all the Ayurvedic clinics all throughout the country, and it has been used starting from small kids to geriatric problems related to memory like MCI, mild cognitive impairments, and other problems. So what we did was we used this Brahmi to study how the worms if the worms can retain memory if it was fed with Brahmi. So Caenorhabditis elegans is a small worm, the adult which will be hardly 1 millimeter in size. But the model organism, the worm model organism is very well established model organism. And it is very easy to tweak this organism to have different disorders. So there are genetically made organisms which have Parkinson's disease, which have memory problems, which have neurological problems, which have other problems related to different areas, different areas. So you can make genetically make an organism have different problems and address your question using this model organism. So here what we did was to feed the food of this worm, the standard lab food that is given to this worm is a bacteria, E. coli bacteria. So what we did here is to feed this worm Brahmi along with its standard food and check its memory. So the worm, in this worm, we can teach the worm certain things. It's like the Pavlovian conditioning, where you give the dog something to eat and you ring a bell, and you repeat this for 4 or 5 days. And the sixth day you ring a bell, and the dog remembers about its food, and it starts to salivate. So it's the same mechanism used here. Here, what we do is worms do not worms get attracted to sodium chloride salt normally, but high concentration of sodium chloride, they get averse. They don't like high concentrations of sodium chloride. So what we do is to teach worm or to condition the worm with this high concentration of sodium chloride. Two types of worms, two groups of worms. One group of worm with Brahmi, and the second group of worm without Brahmi. So what we do is we starve the worm and teach them that starvation means sodium chloride. So if you starve the worm in the presence of sodium chloride, the worm learns that starvation means sodium chloride, and then we give it some time and then check again whether it remembers whether sodium chloride means starvation. So essentially what we are doing is we are checking the memory of the worm to find out whether the worm is going back to the worm retains its memory about starvation and sodium chloride presence after giving memory. So here what you can see is compared to the 0 hour conditioning, meaning just after conditioning, and the post conditioning, 1 hour after conditioning, what we saw is the worms which was treated with Brahmi had retained the memory of that conditioning pretty much longer. After 1 hour, the worms which was fed with Brahmi retained the memory, but the other worm, the control worm, which was not given Brahmi, lost the memory of conditioning. So it went back to sodium chloride after 1 hour. The second pillar, as I told you, is an integrative hospital. The name of the hospital is IAIM, Institute of Ayurveda and Integrative Hospital. This was established with the support of Tatas. We are reaching around, this is the 10th, almost reaching 10th year of the hospital. We have, it's a 100-bedded hospital. Here we try to treat patients majorly with Ayurveda, but we also try to integrate using other modalities of treatment like yoga, like allopathic support is also given in some stages of disease. We have around 40,000 patients from around 50 countries around the world. We also have a charitable ward or a charitable ward where we have around 40 beds where we subsidize treatments, or also we offer free treatments for people who are below poverty line. We also conduct medical camps in and around villages in Bangalore. And we try to standardize quality medicines which we prepare in the hospital, and we dispense it in the hospital for the inpatients. We also have Transdisciplinary University was also involved in the incubation of the journal, peer-reviewed journal, namely Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine. We also have an institutional ethics committee where which we use for clinical research. Different services which we provide in our hospital. There are a few departments, specialized departments like Swasthavritta, Kaya Chikitsa, Rasayana Vajikarna, surgery, Kaumari Vritya, Prasuti, Stri Roga, which is obstetrics and gynecology, ophthalmology and ENT, Shalakya Tantra, Shvasaroga specialty, where we treat respiratory and pulmonology department. We also have gastroenterology, nephrology, Mutragata disorders specialty, dermatology. We also have dental facility. We also have yoga and meditation facilities. We give complementary support to oncology, where patients after chemotherapy or during chemotherapy with an integrated approach. These are a few common disorders which we get in our hospital per year. This is the statistics of 2019. The most common disease that we have is musculoskeletal disorders, and then we get majority of them are neurological conditions. Obstetrics and gynecology is also a huge area, followed by pediatrics, gastroenterology, diabetes, respiratory conditions, eye diseases, diabetes mellitus. We have been successfully managing diabetes mellitus in a huge way without, even after the treatment has been started in the modern biomedicine. We try to wean off, the modern diabetic drugs and keep the patients with only herbal medications with successful reduction in the HbA1c levels. We also have pretty much skin diseases, also other disorders like obesity and hypertension. We get patients from all around the world, majorly from Asia. We have around 33% of patients coming from North America. Europe, we have around 20% of patients. Very few has come from Africa also. We have few patients also from Australia. This is the statistics of last few years. And how do we address this problem of validation? Address this, the area of validation and documentation based on hospital. So one example that I would like to give for this is a study on UTI management with Ayurveda. This is not a published data. It's not published. The study is almost over. It is getting published in few months or so. So what happened was it all started with one case, one patient who basically was a microbiologist. He is a very well famous microbiologist whose mother got recurrent UTI infections. And he being a person from the modern science tried treating his mother from allopathy from different hospitals, but the UTI always came back. So then he brought his mother to our hospital, where the department, concerned department, people like Dr. Neelampika, Purnima, were treating the patient. And what happened was there was, with simple medications, which are told in chapters like Mutra Kritra, told in Ayurveda for Mutra Kritra and Mutra Vigaras, heal the patient. So the person, the microbiologist whose mother got admitted, he was very curious about this, and he wanted us to he wanted us to study this more. So all that started with this one case, and now we have around 33 patients data where we look at, we give patients, medicines which are told in Ayurvedic classics for Mutra Kritra, etc., for recurrent UTI. And what we see is there is, without antibiotic support, and irrespective of the severity of the culture, microbial culture, the symptoms comes down. And there are few resistant bacteria phenotypes prior treatment, which has changed to sensitive phenotypes after treatment in bacteria. reduced and positive groups. So this is what happened when we analyzed around 33 patients of the same case, and it was very interesting to find out that in very few of the cases, even if the culture remained positive, the patients were symptoms free. So the hypothesis which we get from such kind of interventions is that Ayurveda might be acting through a different mode of action. It may not be antimicrobial per se. It may be improving host immune response or through changing the virulence of the bacteria, or maybe it is both. We don't know. So we'll have to take up new studies, or we'll have to improve on the studies to find out more about such interventions, which is very effective. And these medications which we give for such diseases are very common, very easily available medications, and a cheap intervention. It's not even, it doesn't even cost you the cost of the antibiotic. So it's a very, cheap and safe interventions, and there are no recorded no recorded adverse effects for such interventions. So this was one example that I would like to share with you all when it comes to validation and the concept of validation in Ayurveda from a clinical point of angle. One other case was, this is a case, just one case where a patient of pulmonary mycosis had come to our hospital. This was treated by Dr. Prasanth Shankar and his team in IAM. So this case, this was pulmonary mycosis is a fungal infection of lungs, and it usually happens in immunosuppressant patients. So this patient had come to us as a last resort after meeting most of all, or after meeting the allopathic hospitals, but the condition was deteriorating day by day. And he also developed diabetes during the treatment of pulmonary mycosis, and he was very debilitated, very weak when he came to us. And you can see the chest X-ray. I don't have the case sheet with me. These are the chest X-rays as on 2017 9th month and 2017 9th month and 2018 January. The patient recovered, and he is still there with us. He comes to the hospital more often, and he's healthy now. So this was one case that I wanted to show you, just because it's a rare case which we don't get very often. The other areas where clinical research is very important, the other areas where Ayurveda has a lot to offer is in areas like non-healing ulcers, like diabetic foot. These areas where amputation is the way of treatment, is the protocol, is the way of treatment in the modern medical system. Ayurveda has a lot to offer. So this is one patient who came to us who was diabetic and had wet gangrene. He had diabetic foot, and he was 64 years old male patient who was advised to amputate his leg above ankle. So he came to us. The patient was admitted, and we were treating him for diabetes, and he also had hypertension. The leg, as you can see the photo, the leg was there was wet gangrene, foul smelling, sloughing ulcer on the right leg. And the treatment what we started was based on pure Ayurvedic concepts. There are approaches in Ayurveda called as Rakta Shodhaka is an approach. We also have concepts like Vranaropaka. Vranaropaka is modalities of treatments which are used to heal ulcers or to heal injuries. We also used Rasayana treatments, and these are not complicated treatments. These are all very simple modalities which are straight away advised in Ayurvedic textbooks. We use these treatments to treat this patient. Ayurveda explains all this in Vata Rakta Chikitsa, or Dushta Vrana is non-healing ulcer, basically, Chikitsa Adhyayas. And we, as you can see, we could save his leg. Instead of amputing it above ankle, he just lost one finger, which was already gangrene had set in. So this data we have published, this This is a case report which we have published in Journal of Ayurveda and Integrative Medicine. The group who treated the case was Dr. Neelambika's group. We have published the data. You can refer the paper if you are more interested. So these are the things which we do in the hospital in the direction of validating Ayurveda. So we try to bring in cases, we try to give Ayurvedic interventions, and we try to club it with a modern integrative approach where it is required. As and when a stage of disease demands, we also include allopathic interventions. But majorly what we do is to restrain ourselves to Ayurvedic protocol to the treatment of a disease. And this is how we try, this is our humble way of trying to validate or document Ayurveda in an effective way. And this keeps on happening. This is the way it is majorly done in the institute, in the hospital. The third pillar, which I was talking about, is the Center of Conservation of Natural Resources. The center is headed by Dr. Venugopal. This center is involved in documenting medicinal plants of all the traditions. So in India, medical traditions are of two streams, basically. One, the codified stream, which has Ayurveda in it, which has Siddha, Unani, Swarikpa, Tibetan medicine, etc., where you have theoretical foundations available. We have theoretical foundations for Ayurveda. So is there with Siddha, Unani, and Swarikpa. That constitutes the codified stream of medicine. And the other stream, which do not have a theoretical basis per se, is the folk stream. Folk stream is much more a larger stream. Maybe it do not have theoretical foundations, but it is much widely used than the codified streams. And if you see the number of plants which are used by these streams, it is very evident that folk stream uses around 6,500, 4,500 medicinal plants, while Ayurveda, the total number of medicinal plants used is limited to around 1,500. So is Siddha. Siddha uses around 1,200 medicinal plants. But the folk uses around 4,500 medicinal plants. So it's vast and huge. But codified stream has its own its support from the theoretical foundations, and it forms the major clinical intervention in the area of clinical interventions. It forms the major. It plays a major role. So this Center of Conservation of Natural Resources have come up. It's been almost 15 to 20 years of work where they have come up with a database which enlisted the plants used in India in both these streams, both codified and folk streams. So that now we know that the total number of medicinal plants used in all these streams put together is around is of the order 6,500. And now we know how many are used in Ayurveda, in Siddha, in other streams. And now also we know which of these plants and how many of them are endangered. So, so this database is the nation's most comprehensive multidisciplinary database on flora, fauna, and metals and minerals, which are used in traditional materia medica of different, majorly Ayurveda. And it takes the information from these texts starting from around 1500 BC to 19th century AD. The database has it has referenced searchable botanical informations like botanical names. It has synonyms. It has more than 200,000 vernacular names distributed in around 32 Indian languages. Its distribution, threat status of the medicinal plants, state inventories specific to medicinal plants, GIS maps which are available, which for example, there are few plants which are studied extensively, like Saraka, which are endangered. We have also GIS maps for such plants, and then we also have traditional knowledge like Sanskrit names, the bibliography, the references, the extensive references from 1500 BC to 18th century, from all the classical, most of all the classical texts, more than 20 classical texts of Ayurveda. We have details about pharmacopoeia data. We have original Sanskrit slokas, all in a database form, searchable database form, and the total number goes up to 6,500. So the distribution there, in terms of the distribution of medicinal plants, the distribution database is a constant process. We update it, and the curation and updation goes on based on the available published authentic sources. And we use more than it comprises more than 200 floras covering states and districts of India. And a part of this data, this conservation data, is put up in the NVIS site of Government of India, nvis.frlst.org, and frlst.nvis.nic.in is the website. You can get a monograph of all these plants used in different traditions from the site, including a very good quality herbarium for identification. They also give you, they also help you in identifying medicinal plants. If there are any medicinal plants with the user's side which you want to identify, they support identification of the plants too. And this has led to formation of few apps. Red List Medicinal Plant Species of India is an app, which was a byproduct of this database. And it has information related to more than 350 species that are of conservation concern at a state level. So this activity is majorly based on the Center of Conservation of Natural Resources, where we try to document threat status. We try to document the medicinal plant number, the species, its identifications, and different aspects related to plants used in different traditions of medicine. By doing this from around 93 to 2012, the TDU team cataloged this plant entities recorded in medicinal uses in both codified, as I said, both codified and folk streams, and it was majorly from the publications, floras publications which was available. So the problem was there was no one point information available about the distribution of any of these plants. So now it is all sitting in one database which can be accessible. And this supported a flagship project of TDU FRLST during 2012, from the time from 1993 to 2012, to identify and conserve medicinal plants, both in situ and ex situ conservation areas. So what happened was this helped FRLST to establish something called as MPCAs. MPCAs are medicinal plant conservation areas. So these are specific to a species, where you find out which species belongs to what area, and try clubbing this information with the policymakers, the government, and try calling it or try conserving it as an area, an established area for the conservation of that specific plant. And now we have 108 medicinal plant conservation areas throughout the country, which is one of the largest of that kind in the world. So that was one, product or one aspect in which we work using this database of medicinal plants. So by this, I would like to conclude my presentation. These are the few humble ways that we try to validate or document Ayurveda. This is our campus. Our campus is also filled with around 1,000 species of medicinal plants. Every green that you see in the campus is a medicinal plant. So this is our humble way of looking at validation and documentation of medicinal plants. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dr. Verghese. Thank you so much. You have shared with us a lot of information, and I do want to add that this is only a part of all the activities going on in the Transdisciplinary University in Yelahanka in Bangalore. I hope those with us will find a few moments to look through the TDU, to explore the TDU website and learn a little more. There might be a question here from Balaprasad ji. Balaprasad ji, namaskar ji.
Namaskar.
You had a...
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. So the question is not particularly for you, but in general, you see a lot of research in India has been done in Ayush sector and medicinal plant sector also. I have seen the research in Ayush and NMPP both very close angle, because I was director in Ayush for 5 years from 2002 to 2006. And I was CEO National Medicinal Plant Board, so I interacted with FRLST also during that period. And I was the joint secretary in Ayush, and I chaired the standing finance committee of all the 5 research council. They are there. So my question is that, and then there are a lot of research have been done by eminent universities like BHU, IPGTR, Jamnagar. In fact, Dr. Katoch is sitting here. He was product of NIA Jaipur. And anywhere in MD, there is good excellent research done to get the degree. Then PhD are being done Ayurveda for a long time. My request will be that Dr. Katoch should consider to establish a research management information system, so that there should be software where what research has been done. I'm not saying the research has been completed in each and every field. I'm not saying that. Research is very important part of any science. Any science which is growing, it has to undertake research and have to go forward. So there will be always some difference in quality of research. Research was being done in physics in Newton time is different than what was being done during Einstein time and what was being done now. Similarly, the Ayurveda has grown in terms of research. Also, what was being done 30 years back, what was being done 15 years back, what is being done now, and what is the requirement. And for validation, I will not go into difference what Dr. Katoch said about verification and validation. Let us use the word validation. For the classical drugs also, it's very important that all our old classical, even start with the drugs coming in the essential list, what Dr. Katoch has mentioned, there should be proper validations, and then it should be documented and it should be brought in the research management information system. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. So, Balaprasad ji, I have a follow-up question for you. Over your period in the ministry, I don't know how to be more diplomatic than the way I'm going to present this. I'm sure you've seen a lot of positive happenings, as Katoch mentioned, over the years, how things changed over the decades. Where do you think things can be improved if we want to make those policy discussions and policy changes? We'll appreciate yours, a brief comment if you're happy to comment on it.
Yes, yes. You see, everything, let us start from the availability of the Ayurvedic practitioners. I recall Dr. Katoch, you remember, first day when we got 100 Ayush physician seats in National Health Mission. So that time it was called National Rural Health Mission. So this was decided that 100 Ayush physicians will be posted in 100 PSC. Now we went to the every PSC, we have a doctors, Ayush doctor. So what Dr. Katoch was saying about, we have 1,280 wellness center. Why only 1,280? India has 6,005. India has around 2,50,000 panchayat, 6,50,000 villages, and the availability of health facility in rural area is very inadequate. And if you talk about universal health care, in India, you cannot have universal health care without the support of the Ayush physicians coming and available. So providing health facility and that is our policy, universal health care. Everybody should have the facility of visiting a doctor, and the doctor will be available, should be available nearby. And right now, as per the statistics, only 13% people in rural area have the facility of doctors. We have, if you see that even sub-centers in India is around 1 lakh to 200. Means sub-center is not available even in one gram panchayat. Forget about in every village. So people has to, the health facility has to improve, and here the Ayush physician can provide the health facility. First thing, health, providing the medical facility to our citizen, and our citizen health is comes up to the country's health. If your citizens' health are not good, your country's health will also be impacted accordingly. So providing health facility, Ayush has a very important role, and I also agree with Mr. Thomas what was saying about the traditional healers. Many places we have to use the traditional healers to provide health support system. There are many remote areas, tribal areas. There is nothing. There is no even not even sub-center. Therefore, and his team. In fact, I have been interacted with the FRLST when I was in Manipur also. So one is availability of the medical treatment. That is one area we have to look forward. Then what Dr. Katoch was also mentioning about the research, quality of research. I have done my PhD on research management, and my own submission is feeling is that no country can progress if it lacks in research, or that applies to a particular sector also. In fact, there is a famous book called Made in Japan, where Akio Morita has said that if Japan is going to lose the war, Second World War, and Japan lost, and at that time he was criticized. He in his book, he has cited that Japan was lagging in technology. That's why Japan could not win. So that applies to every sector. If you lag in research, you cannot progress. You cannot be world leader. This is one area, just like I will talk about Mr. Varghese was saying, there are 7,000 medicinal plants. We have Himalaya, we have marine, Himalayas to marine. We have a desert to rainforest. We have both types of desert, hot desert and cold desert. So, and these gradients gives a lot of good area for producing medicinal plant. And this COVID also has underlined the Kadha. Kadha is a set of collection of medicinal plant. My point is that India, our predecessor has given us huge treasure of knowledge. Huge treasure. Here we have hardware also, software also. We have knowledge, we have medicinal plant. This combination will be a game changer for our own country, and it will bring the 3 dimensions more. One is that rural livelihood, medicinal plant production, cultivation. Who collects medicinal plant from the forest area? Who are tribal people? So there is a huge element of rural livelihood. The second is manufacturing. So you have industrialization here also. And if you see the growth of any company, including Ayush department own company, IMPCL, these sectors are growing more than 25% per annum, even in the distress situation. This is a sector which is growing, so it gives a lot of rural income and export. Our export of medicinal plant, even in this COVID time, is much more higher than any other sector. So we have a software, we have of knowledge of medicine practices, we have a software of knowledge, and we have a hardware of medicine plant. These combinations gives a huge opportunity for the overall growth of the country, providing health facilities, providing rural livelihood, providing export income, hard currency. This whole sector, if it grows, India will be shining like a star in the world.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. We have noted all your points. We are recording all of this, and we will be discussing and debating this internally so that we can have more focused webinars